My husband texted me during my mother's funeral. Taking the kids to Disney World. They need happy memories, not your drama. I buried her alone. 3 days later, he returned to find the locks changed, his bags packed, and a court summons. The Disney trip photos with his mistress? My lawyer's favorite evidence. The kids testified against him. Don't expect me to pretend to be sad about your mother. We both know she never liked me anyway. Handle the funeral yourself. I've got better things to do. The message glowed on my phone screen as Reverend Williams raised his hand for the final blessing. I watched the words appear character by character while 60 mourners stood with bowed heads around my mother Aubrey's gravesite, completely unaware that my world had just shifted on its axis. My finger trembled as I scrolled up to confirm the sender. John. My husband of 23 years had just delivered the cruelest blow imaginable while I stood beside my mother's casket. No condolences. No apology for his absence. Just calculated malice wrapped in digital convenience. I glanced around the cemetery, half expecting to see him lurking behind a headstone with that smirk he wore when he thought he'd won an argument. But there was only empty space where he should have been standing, supporting me through the hardest day of my life. Eternal rest grant unto her, O Lord, the Reverend intoned, his voice carrying across the October morning. And let perpetual light shine upon her. The words felt meaningless now. All I could think about was John somewhere across town, probably at his office or grabbing lunch, completely unbothered by the fact that the woman who'd raised me was being lowered into the ground. The same woman who'd welcomed him into our family with open arms despite her private reservations. As the service concluded, my sister Linda appeared at my elbow. Her red-rimmed eyes searched the dispersing crowd before settling on me with concern. Kim, where's John? I've been looking for him all morning. The lie formed automatically, polished by years of practice. Client emergency. You know how demanding his buyers can be. Linda's eyebrows drew together. On Saturday, during Mom's funeral. Hearing it spoken aloud made the excuse sound ridiculous even to me, but I'd become an expert at defending John's absences. It's a major commercial deal. He felt terrible about missing this. The second lie came easier than the first, which should have alarmed me more than it did. Instead, I felt nothing but a cold, empty space where my emotions used to be. At the fellowship hall, the reception unfolded in a blur of casseroles and condolences. I moved through clusters of mourners, accepting hugs and sharing memories while my mind remained fixed on John's message. The casual cruelty wasn't what shocked me most. It was the raw honesty. For once, he'd shown me exactly who he was without his carefully maintained public persona. Your mother was such a treasure, Mrs. Henderson said, gripping my hands with surprising strength for someone in her 80s. She talked about you and the children constantly. John, of course. Always so proud of your family. I smiled and nodded, wondering what Mom had really thought about John during those quiet conversations. Had she noticed things I'd trained myself to overlook? The way he dismissed my opinions at dinner parties? How he made cutting remarks about my appearance that he passed off as jokes? His habit of scrolling through his phone during Emma's piano recitals? Speaking of John, where is that husband of yours? Mrs. Henderson continued, craning her neck to scan the crowded room. I hope he's not coming down with something. Work crisis, I replied, the words flowing smoothly now. He's absolutely devastated he couldn't be here. Mrs. Henderson clucked sympathetically, but I caught the puzzled look she exchanged with her husband. Everyone in our small town knew John sold commercial real estate from his downtown office. What kind of emergency would keep him away from his mother-in-law's funeral? My phone buzzed again. Another message from John. How much longer is this thing going to take? I was thinking of grilling steaks tonight if you're not too tired. The disconnect was breathtaking. While I was surrounded by people who'd driven hours to honor my mother's memory, John was planning dinner as if this were any other Saturday. As if the woman who'd shaped my entire life was just an inconvenience to be handled efficiently. Emma tugged at my black dress during a lull in conversation. My 7-year-old daughter's face was streaked with tears, her usual bouncy energy subdued by the weight of loss. Mommy, why didn't Daddy come to say goodbye to Grandma Aubrey? The question stopped every conversation within earshot. I knelt down to Emma's level, acutely aware of the curious glances from nearby relatives as I searched for words that wouldn't destroy her image of her father. Daddy had something very important he had to do for work today, sweetheart. More important than grandma? Her innocent logic cut straight to the heart of everything wrong with my marriage. Before I could formulate an answer, Jake appeared beside us. My 10-year-old son had been trying to be strong all day, but confusion clouded his features as he processed his sister's question. Kyle's dad missed work when his grandmother died, Jake said quietly. He said some things are more important than making money. The comparison hung in the air like an accusation. Out of the mouths of babes. What was I teaching my children about priorities? About showing up for the people you love? About what commitment actually meant? We'll discuss this later, I said, immediately regretting how dismissive I sounded. But how could I explain something I didn't understand myself? During a quiet moment, Linda pulled me aside near the coffee station. Her expression was grave as she glanced around to ensure we wouldn't be overheard. Kim, there's something I need to tell you. I've been debating whether to bring this up today, but after John not showing up. She paused, clearly struggling with her words. I saw him Tuesday evening at Romano's. My blood went cold. Romano's was the upscale Italian place downtown that John had always dismissed as overpriced and pretentious whenever I'd suggested celebrating our anniversary there. He wasn't alone, Linda continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. There was a woman with him. Young, blonde, very attractive. They weren't discussing business, Kim. They were holding hands across the table. The coffee cup slipped from my numb fingers, shattering against the linoleum floor in an explosion of ceramic and brown liquid. Several people rushed over with napkins and concerned voices, but I barely registered their help. All I could think about was Tuesday night, when John had claimed he was showing properties to potential investors from Atlanta and wouldn't be home until after 10. Are you absolutely certain it was him? I asked, though my gut already knew the answer. Linda nodded solemnly. I'm positive. I almost went over to say hello, but something about the whole scene felt wrong. The way they were looking at each other, laughing together. She didn't need to finish the sentence. As church ladies cleaned up the mess around my feet, I felt the final pieces of my denial cracking apart. The late nights that had become routine over the past 6 months. The new designer cologne that appeared in our bathroom without explanation. The sudden interest in working out again after years of broken promises. The way he'd become increasingly critical of everything I did, as if he were building a case against me. My phone buzzed with yet another message. By the way, don't wait up. Meeting some clients for drinks after dinner. Probably be late. The pattern was so obvious now that I wondered how I'd missed it for so long. Or maybe I hadn't missed it. Maybe I'd simply chosen not to see it because acknowledging the truth would have required making changes I wasn't ready for. That evening, after tucking Emma and Jake into bed at Mom's house, I found myself alone in my childhood bedroom. The same faded wallpaper, the same window seat where I'd spent countless hours reading and dreaming about my future. Back when I believed marriage meant partnership, when I thought love meant showing up for each other during the hard times. I pulled out my phone and read through John's messages one more time. The heartless dismissal of my mother's death. The casual inquiry about dinner plans. The convenient excuse for another late night. 3 texts that told the story of my marriage more clearly than 23 years of trying to make it work. In this room where my mother had taught me to be strong, where she'd shown me through her own example that a woman could survive anything life threw at her, I finally understood what I had to do. John had chosen today to show me exactly who he was. From now on I would believe him. The woman who'd spent decades making excuses for her husband's behavior died that day alongside her mother. Tomorrow I would start becoming someone else entirely. Someone my mother would be proud of. 3 days after the funeral, John announced his brilliant solution to our family's grief. The kids need a distraction, he said, barely looking up from his phone at breakfast. I'm taking them to Disney World for a week. Some family bonding time to help them process everything. Emma's face lit up for the first time since losing her grandmother. Really, Daddy? We're going to see Mickey Mouse. That's right, Princess. Just you, me and Jake. A healing trip for our family. He finally glanced at me with those practiced concerned eyes. You need time to rest anyway, Kim. You've been through so much. I nodded and smiled, playing the grateful wife while my stomach churned. Since when did John volunteer for solo parenting duty? Since when did he care about the children's emotional processing? But Emma and Jake were so excited that I couldn't bring myself to question his motives aloud. They left on Thursday morning with matching Mickey Mouse ears and enough luggage for a month. John kissed my cheek at the door with theatrical tenderness. Take care of yourself while we're gone. Maybe catch up with the girls, get a massage. Whatever you need. The house felt different the moment their car disappeared down the street. Not empty, liberated. For the first time in months, I could think clearly without constantly managing John's moods or anticipating his criticism. I started in his home office that afternoon, initially just looking for insurance papers Mom's lawyer had requested. But the credit card statements spread across his desk told a very different story than the grieving husband facade he'd been performing. Romano's Italian bistro appeared 6 times in the past 3 months. Always on nights when John claimed to be showing properties or meeting investors. Always charges for 2 people, expensive wine, dessert courses that suggested leisurely romantic dinners rather than business meetings. My hands shook as I found hotel receipts tucked behind his computer monitor. The Fairmont downtown, the boutique inn in Savannah, the mountain resort in Asheville. All weekend getaways I'd never taken, all charged to our joint account while I stayed home with the children, believing his stories about real estate conferences and client obligations. I photographed everything with my phone, my journalism background from college kicking in as I documented each piece of evidence methodically. Bank statements showing ATM withdrawals in cities where John claimed never to have been. Restaurant charges that perfectly aligned with his business trips. A paper trail of deception stretching back almost a year. The jewelry receipts were the worst discovery. Hidden in a folder marked Tax Documents 2023, I found receipts from Morrison's fine jewelry totaling over $3,000. A tennis bracelet, diamond earrings, a gold necklace with a heart pendant. None of which had ever appeared around my neck or on my wrists. I stared at the receipt for the heart necklace, purchased just 2 weeks before our anniversary. The same anniversary when John had handed me a gift card to Target and said he'd been too busy to shop properly. The same anniversary when he checked his phone throughout our dinner at Applebee's and complained about the service. That evening, I created a fake Facebook profile using a photo I'd found online of a generic middle-aged woman. The kind of profile that wouldn't raise suspicions if someone checked it casually. Within hours, I'd located John's real estate company page and began following the digital breadcrumbs. His business partner Lily Chin had an active Instagram account filled with professional photos and carefully curated lifestyle content. Scrolling back through her recent posts, I found them. Photos from the Asheville mountain resort I'd seen on the hotel receipt. John's hands clearly visible in several shots. Adjusting her hair in one, reaching across a restaurant table in another. The captions made my stomach turn. Perfect weekend getaway with my favorite person. When someone special surprises you with mountain views. Feeling grateful for unexpected love. Posted on the exact dates when John had told me he was attending a commercial real estate conference in Charlotte. I screenshot everything, creating a digital file that would make any detective proud. Photos of them hiking together, sharing champagne on a hotel balcony, walking hand in hand through downtown Asheville. All while I'd been home with Emma and Jake, preparing for Mom's cancer treatments and managing the household alone. Friday morning, I called Rebecca Martinez's law office. She'd handled my friend Sarah's divorce 2 years ago and had a reputation for being both thorough and ruthless when protecting her clients' interests. I need to see you as soon as possible, I told her assistant. It's urgent. Rebecca's office occupied the top floor of a converted Victorian mansion downtown, all dark wood and leather-bound law books. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. Tell me everything, she said, settling behind her massive desk with a legal pad. I spread out the printed photos, receipts, and bank statements like evidence at a crime scene. Rebecca's expression remained neutral as she examined each piece, making notes in precise handwriting. How long have you suspected the affair? She asked. I only confirmed it this week, but looking back. I paused, thinking about all the signs I'd rationalized away. The behavior changes started about a year ago. Maybe longer. Any joint assets I should know about? Real estate, investment accounts, retirement funds. Our house is paid off. We have savings, his 401k, the kids' college funds. I pulled out a folder I'd prepared. Everything's documented here. Rebecca smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. You've done excellent preliminary work, Kimberly. Most clients come in here with nothing but suspicions and hurt feelings. You've brought me a roadmap. She explained the process with clinical precision. Emergency custody filings, asset protection strategies, fault-based divorce proceedings. Terms I'd never imagined applying to my own life suddenly became essential vocabulary. The timing is actually perfect, she said. With him out of town, we can prepare everything without raising suspicions. When he returns, we'll be ready to move decisively. That evening, I called Linda and asked her to come over. Then I texted my two closest friends, Maria and Jennifer, asking them to join us. If I was going to dismantle my life and rebuild it from scratch, I needed people I could trust completely. They arrived within an hour, armed with wine and concerned expressions. I'd known them all since college, back when we were young women with big dreams and unshakable faith in happy endings. I need to show you something, I said, spreading John's betrayal across my dining room table like a puzzle we needed to solve together. The silence stretched for several minutes as they absorbed the evidence. Maria, a nurse practitioner, examined the receipts with professional detachment. Jennifer, an accountant, immediately began calculating the financial impact. Linda just sat there shaking her head. "That lying piece of garbage," Jennifer finally said. "How long has this been going on?" "At least a year, maybe longer." "I've been so stupid." "You haven't been stupid," Maria said firmly. "You've been trusting your husband, which is what wives are supposed to do. He's the one who chose to abuse that trust." Linda leaned forward, her jaw set with determination. "What do you need from us?" I looked around the table at these women who'd celebrated my wedding, attended my children's birthday parties, and stood beside me at Mom's graveside just days ago. I need help staying strong. I need people who'll remind me that I deserve better when I start making excuses for him. "Consider it done," Jennifer said. "We've got your back." As we made plans for the coming confrontation, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Genuine support from people who cared about my well-being more than maintaining social appearances. John had isolated me so gradually that I'd almost forgotten what real friendship felt like. My phone buzzed with a text from Disney World. A photo of John, Emma, and Jake in front of Cinderella Castle, all three beaming at the camera. The perfect family vacation, funded by money he'd been spending on his mistress for months. I showed the photo to my support team and Maria shook her head in disgust. "He's using those babies as props for his lies." "Not anymore," I said, saving the photo to my evidence file. "Everything he does from now on just makes my case stronger." For the first time since reading that cruel text at Mom's funeral, I felt like myself again. The woman who'd been buried under years of gaslighting and manipulation was finally clawing her way back to the surface. John thought he was so clever, taking the children away to give himself space to maneuver. What he'd actually done was give me time to build an unbreakable case against him. When he returned from Disney World, he'd find a very different wife waiting for him. Monday morning, while John posted a photo of himself and the kids at Space Mountain with the caption, "Making magical memories with my babies," I walked into the Riverside County Courthouse carrying a manila folder that would end our marriage. Rebecca had prepared everything over the weekend. The divorce petition cited irreconcilable differences and adultery, supported by a thick stack of evidence that painted John as both an unfaithful husband and negligent father. His absence from my mother's funeral became Exhibit A in our case for emotional abandonment. "Are you ready for this?" Rebecca asked as we approached the filing clerk's window. I thought about Emma's confused face when she'd asked why Daddy didn't come to say goodbye to Grandma. About the jewelry receipts for gifts I'd never received. About that heartless text message while I stood beside my mother's casket. I've never been more ready for anything in my life. The filing process took less than 20 minutes. 20 minutes to officially document the end of 23 years of marriage. The clerk stamped each page with mechanical efficiency, completely unaware that she was processing the death certificate of my old life. "Emergency custody hearing is scheduled for Friday morning," Rebecca explained as we walked back to her car. "That gives us 4 days to complete the asset protection while he's still in Florida posting vacation photos." Our first stop was First National Bank, where I'd been a customer since college. The manager, Mrs. Williams, had known my family for decades. Her expression grew increasingly concerned as Rebecca explained why we needed to freeze our joint accounts. "I'm so sorry you're going through this, Kimberly," she said, typing commands into her computer. "Especially so soon after losing your mother." "The timing isn't coincidental," Rebecca replied curtly. Predators often strike when their victims are most vulnerable. Mrs. Williams froze the joint checking and savings accounts, protecting nearly $40,000 from John's potential spite. We moved half into a new account in my name only, leaving enough in the joint account to avoid raising immediate suspicions about regular bills. What about the children's college funds? I asked. Those are already in your name as the primary account holder, Mrs. Williams assured me. He can't touch them without your signature. Relief flooded through me. At least Emma and Jake's futures were secure, regardless of how ugly this divorce became. Tuesday afternoon, Rebecca introduced me to Marcus Thompson, a private investigator who specialized in matrimonial cases. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of unremarkable appearance that would blend into any crowd. Your husband's patterns are very predictable, Marcus said, reviewing the evidence I'd compiled. Men like this usually stick to routines once they feel comfortable. Makes my job easier. He'd already identified the hotel where John and Lily typically met for their weekend getaways. The Grandview Resort, 2 hours north of town, marketed itself as a romantic retreat for couples. Marcus had booked the room next door for this coming weekend. Based on their social media activity and your credit card records, they'll be there Saturday night, he explained. I'll have everything documented before Sunday checkout. The clinical nature of planning to destroy my husband's lies felt surreal, but also empowering. After years of being reactive to John's manipulations, I was finally taking control of the narrative. Wednesday morning brought the locksmith. Carlos arrived at 8 a.m. with his van full of tools and complete discretion. Rebecca had recommended him specifically for sensitive domestic situations. You want the locks changed on all exterior doors? He asked, examining our front entrance. Every single one, including the garage and basement access. As Carlos worked, I packed John's belongings with meticulous care. Not out of lingering affection, but because I wanted him to have no grounds for claiming I damaged his property out of spite. Everything folded neatly, sorted by category, boxed and labeled. His expensive suits, his golf clubs, the cologne he'd started wearing for Lily. I found myself pausing over a photo tucked into his dresser drawer. Our wedding day, both of us impossibly young and full of hope. For just a moment, grief for what we'd lost threatened to overwhelm my resolve. Then I remembered his text message during Mom's funeral, and the grief transformed back into determination. Linda arrived that afternoon to help me practice the conversation I'd need to have with Emma and Jake. We sat in my living room, role-playing different scenarios while I tried to find words that would explain their father's choices without destroying their sense of security. Daddy made some decisions that hurt our family, I practiced saying. Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes that mean they can't live together anymore. But this is not your fault and Daddy still loves you very much. What if they ask why he had to leave? Linda asked, playing devil's advocate. Because Daddy needs to learn how to make better choices and sometimes people need space to figure that out. The answers felt inadequate, but Rebecca had stressed the importance of keeping explanations simple and age-appropriate. The details would come later, when they were old enough to understand the full scope of their father's betrayal. Thursday evening, Marcus called with an update. They checked into the Grandview Resort an hour ago. Same suite they've used 3 times before. I'm in position. My phone buzzed almost immediately with a text from John. Kids are exhausted but having a blast. Probably be late getting home Sunday. Don't wait up. The casual lie rolled off his tongue so easily even in text form. He was setting up his alibi for the weekend while Marcus prepared to document his real activities. The irony was almost funny. Friday morning, I dressed carefully for the emergency custody hearing. Professional but not aggressive, Rebecca had advised. Conservative navy suit, minimal jewelry, hair pulled back in a neat bun. I wanted to look like the stable parent, the responsible choice for primary custody. The courthouse was busier than I'd expected, filled with people navigating their own legal crises. I spotted several other women with similar manila folders and shell-shocked expressions. We were all members of the same unwanted club. Judge Patricia Morrison had a reputation for fairness but little tolerance for games. She reviewed our filing with sharp eyes while John's court-appointed attorney scrambled to mount a defense without his client present. Your Honor, Mr. Thompson is currently caring for his children during their school break, the lawyer argued weakly. His absence today shouldn't be held against him. Rebecca stood with calm authority. Your Honor, the defendant chose to take minor children out of state during a family crisis, immediately following his failure to attend his mother-in-law's funeral. This pattern demonstrates poor judgment and questionable priorities regarding the children's emotional needs. Judge Morrison's expression suggested she agreed. Emergency custody is granted to the petitioner. The children will remain in Mrs. Thompson's primary care pending further hearings. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt like I was breathing freely for the first time in months. Whatever happened next, my children would be safe and protected while we navigated this process. Saturday afternoon, my phone rang. Marcus, calling from the Grandview Resort. I've got everything you need, he said simply. Clear photos, video evidence, even audio recordings from their balcony. Your husband's affair is now officially documented beyond any possible denial. I hung up and looked around my house, really looked at it for the first time in years. The home John would no longer have access to. The space where Emma and Jake would continue growing up, but without the toxic undercurrent of their father's deception poisoning the atmosphere. Sunday night, I sat on my front porch with a cup of coffee watching for headlights. When John returned from Disney World, he'd find new locks, packed bags, and a wife who finally knew exactly who he was. The woman who'd made excuses for 23 years was gone. In her place sat someone stronger, someone who'd learned that love without respect was just another form of abuse. I was ready for whatever came next. The headlights swept across my living room window at 9:47 p.m. Sunday night. I watched from behind the curtain as John's BMW pulled into our driveway, the backseat packed with Disney World souvenirs and tired children. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my hands remained steady as I checked the recording app on my phone one final time. Emma and Jake stumbled out of the car, clutching stuffed animals and chattering about their magical week. John looked relaxed, refreshed even, probably thinking he'd pulled off another perfect deception. He had no idea that while he'd been playing devoted father in public, I'd been systematically dismantling his carefully constructed lies. I heard his key slide into the front door lock, followed by confused jiggling when it wouldn't turn. Then silence. I could picture him standing there, probably checking to make sure he had the right key, his mind struggling to process this first crack in his controlled universe. The doorbell rang. Then again more insistently. Kim, the key isn't working. Did you have the locks changed? His voice carried the forced patience of someone trying to maintain composure in front of the children. I opened the door but kept the chain lock engaged, creating just enough space to speak. John's face appeared in the gap, his expression shifting from confusion to alarm as he took in my calm demeanor. Hello, John. Emma, Jake, come give Mommy a hug. The children squeezed through the narrow opening, full of stories about roller coasters and character breakfasts. I held them close while John stood frozen on his own front porch, still processing the reality of being locked out of his home. Kids, go upstairs and get ready for bed. You can tell me all about Disney World tomorrow. They bounded up the stairs, their innocent chatter fading as John and I faced each other across the threshold. I opened the door wider but remained blocking his entrance. What's going on, Kim? Why are my bags on the porch? I handed him the manila envelope containing divorce papers and the restraining order. I think you'll find everything explained in there. His hands shook slightly as he tore open the envelope. I watched his face cycle through disbelief, panic, and finally rage as he read Rebecca's meticulous documentation of his betrayal. This is insane, he whispered, then louder. This is completely insane. You can't just lock me out of my own house. Actually, I can. The emergency custody order gives me temporary possession of the marital home. You'll need to find somewhere else to stay. Kim, listen to me. His voice took on that manipulative tone I'd learned to recognize over the years. I know you're upset about the funeral, but this is an overreaction. We can work through this. Can we work through Romano's Italian Bistro? Can we work through the Grandview Resort? Can we work through the $3,000 in jewelry you bought for another woman? The color drained from his face. How did you find out? John, you've been documenting your affair on our joint credit card for months. Did you really think I'd never notice? He stepped closer, his charm replaced by desperation. Whatever you think you know, you're wrong. Lily is a business partner. Those were client dinners, business trips. Business partners don't hold hands across restaurant tables. They don't book romantic suites at mountain resorts. And they certainly don't post photos of themselves hiking together while you're supposedly at real estate conferences. You've been spying on me? His voice cracked with outrage as if I were the one who'd violated our marriage vows. I've been paying attention. Something I should have done years ago. That's when the facade finally cracked completely. John's face contorted with fury as he pushed against the door, trying to force his way inside. This is my house. Those are my children. You can't just decide to blow up our family because you're having some kind of breakdown. I stepped back and began closing the door. The breakdown happened 23 years ago when I married you. This is me finally getting healthy. He pounded on the door with both fists, his voice rising to a shout. Open this door right now, Kim. We need to talk about this like adults. Daddy. Emma's frightened voice called from the top of the stairs. Why are you yelling? I looked up at my daughter's scared face and felt my resolve strengthen. Go back to your room, sweetheart. Daddy's just confused about something, but everything's okay. John's pounding intensified. Kim, open this door. You're scaring the children. Is that what you want? I activated the recording app and held my phone near the door, capturing every threat, every manipulation, every desperate attempt to regain control. This would all go to Rebecca, who would add it to our growing file of evidence. For the next hour, John alternated between rage and false remorse. He screamed about his rights as a father, then switched to tearful apologies about being a better husband. He threatened legal action, then begged for another chance. The performance was almost impressive in its range, but I'd seen it all before in smaller doses over the years. Finally, exhaustion seemed to overtake him. This isn't over, Kim, he said through the door, his voice hoarse from shouting. I'm not going to let you destroy our family. Our family was destroyed the moment you chose another woman over your wife and children. I'm just cleaning up the wreckage. I heard his footsteps retreating down the porch steps, followed by his car door slamming. The BMW's engine roared to life with unnecessary aggression before he squealed out of the driveway, probably hoping the neighbors would notice his dramatic exit. Emma crept downstairs an hour later, clutching her new Minnie Mouse doll. Mommy, why couldn't Daddy come inside? I knelt down to her level, choosing my words carefully. Sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt their families. When that happens, we need to have some space while we figure out how to fix things. Did Daddy make bad choices? The innocence in her question broke my heart. Yes, sweetheart. Daddy made some bad choices. But that doesn't mean he doesn't love you and Jake. It just means we need to live differently for a while. Jake appeared in the doorway, his 10-year-old mind clearly working to process what he'd witnessed. Are you and Dad getting divorced? I'd practiced this conversation with Linda, but facing my son's direct questions still felt like stepping off a cliff. Jake, we are. But that doesn't change how much we both love you. Some things about our family will be different, but you and Emma will always be the most important thing in both of our lives. Tuesday morning, my phone rang while I was packing the kids' lunches for school. An unknown number, but I answered anyway. Is this Kimberly Thompson? The voice was young, female, uncertain. Yes. Who is this? This is Lily Chin. I think we need to talk. My grip tightened on the phone. I'm listening. I received some text messages yesterday. Screenshots of conversations between John and other women. I don't know who sent them, but... Her voice broke slightly. I had no idea I wasn't the only one. So John's betrayal ran even deeper than I'd discovered. Multiple women, multiple lies, multiple lives he'd been juggling while playing devoted husband and father at home. I'm sorry you had to find out that way, I said, and surprisingly I meant it. I thought I was in love with him. I thought he was going to leave you for me. He was crying now. I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. You're just another one of his victims. After she hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of coffee, marveling at the irony. John's web of deception had become so complex that it was now collapsing under its own weight. The man who prided himself on being a master manipulator had finally outsmarted himself. My phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. John's attorney called. They want to discuss settlement terms. Apparently, he's been advised that fighting this publicly would be career suicide. I smiled as I typed back. Tell them we'll consider reasonable offers. The woman who'd spent 23 years accepting crumbs of affection was gone. In her place sat someone who knew exactly what she was worth, and more importantly what she wouldn't tolerate. John had trained me to be grateful for the bare minimum. Now he was about to learn what happened when someone finally demanded what they deserved. The settlement conference took place in a sterile conference room at the courthouse 3 weeks later. John sat across from me at the polished oak table, looking smaller somehow in his expensive suit, while his attorney shuffled through papers with the defeated air of someone who knew they were fighting a losing battle. Rebecca had arrived with 3 bankers' boxes of evidence and the confidence of a prosecutor who'd never lost a case. She spread Marcus's photographs across the table like a royal flush. John and Lily at the Grandview Resort, holding hands at Romano's, kissing on a hiking trail. Each image more damaging than the last. "My client is prepared to be reasonable," John's lawyer began weakly, "but we feel Mrs. Thompson's demands are excessive given the circumstances." Excessive. Rebecca's voice could have cut glass. "Your client spent over $15,000 on his mistress while his wife cared for a dying mother. He abandoned his family during their greatest time of need. I'd say my client's demands are remarkably restrained." John finally spoke, his voice carrying that familiar manipulative tone. "Kim, be reasonable. We built this life together. You can't just take everything." I looked at him directly for the first time since the meeting began. "I built this life, John. You just lived in it while pursuing other women." His lawyer tried a different approach. "The children need stability. Shared custody would be. The children need protection from a father who teaches them that betrayal and selfishness are acceptable." Rebecca slid a folder across the table. "These are statements from teachers, neighbors, and family members documenting Mr. Thompson's consistent absence from his children's lives." I watched John's face as his lawyer read through the testimonies. Mrs. Patterson from Emma's school, noting how John had missed every parent-teacher conference for 3 years. Coach Miller from Jake's baseball team, documenting John's absence from every game this season. Even our elderly neighbor Mr. Hendricks, who'd watched John leave 4 business trips that coincided with romantic getaways. "This is character assassination," John protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "This is documentation," Rebecca corrected. "Your client made these choices. We're simply presenting them to the court." The negotiations dragged on for 4 hours. John's lawyer tried to salvage something from the wreckage, but every argument crumbled under Rebecca's methodical presentation of evidence. Financial records showing the pattern of deception. Credit card statements revealing the scope of his betrayal. Witness testimonies painting him as an absent husband and father. When Judge Morrison finally rendered her decision 2 days later, the courtroom felt electric with tension. I sat between Rebecca and Linda, my hands folded calmly in my lap while John fidgeted at the defendant's table. "The court finds clear evidence of adultery and financial misconduct," Judge Morrison announced, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Primary custody is awarded to Mrs. Thompson, along with the marital home and 65% of marital assets." John's sharp intake of breath was audible across the courtroom. "Mr. Thompson will have supervised visitation every other weekend and 1 evening per week, to be reassessed in 6 months based on his compliance with court orders. Additionally, he will pay monthly support of $3,000 to ensure the children's continued stability." I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness as the gavel fell. Relief that Emma and Jake would be protected. Sadness for the family we might have been if John had chosen differently. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt like I was emerging from a cave I'd been trapped in for decades. The October air felt crisp and clean, full of possibilities I'd forgotten existed. The first month after the divorce was finalized brought challenges I hadn't anticipated. Emma struggled with nightmares, often crawling into bed with me at 3 a.m. asking if Daddy was ever coming home. Jake became protective in ways that broke my heart, checking the locks every night and asking if I needed help with tasks he'd never noticed before. But slowly we found our rhythm. Saturday mornings became pancake breakfast competitions, with Emma and Jake taking turns choosing the shapes. Sunday afternoons were for exploring local parks and museums we'd never had time to visit when John's schedule dominated our weekends. "Mommy, can we have ice cream for dinner?" Emma asked one Tuesday evening as we walked through the grocery store. The old me would have said no, worried about nutrition and proper meal planning. The new me bought 3 different flavors and we ate Sundays while watching Disney movies on the couch. "This is the best dinner ever," Jake declared, chocolate sauce on his chin. "I think so too," I agreed and meant it completely. At work, something fundamental had shifted. Without John's constant criticism echoing in my head, I found myself speaking up in meetings, offering ideas I would have kept to myself before. When my supervisor, Patricia, called me into her office 6 weeks after the divorce, I expected another project assignment. "Kimberly, I've been watching your work lately and I'm impressed. The Morrison account presentation was exceptional. How would you feel about taking over as senior project manager?" The promotion came with a 30% salary increase in my own office. The old me would have immediately worried about whether I was qualified, whether John would approve of the longer hours. The new me accepted on the spot. "I've been waiting for this opportunity for years," I told Patricia, and realized it was true. The unexpected part of my new life was how other women began reaching out. Friends of friends who'd heard about my situation. Neighbors who'd been trapped in similar marriages. Women from Emma's school who saw me thriving as a single mother and wanted to know how I'd found the courage to leave. Sarah Martinez contacted me through Facebook in November. Her message was hesitant but desperate. "I heard about your divorce through mutual friends. I think I'm in a similar situation, but I don't know where to start. Would you be willing to talk?" We met for coffee that Saturday while the kids were at their supervised visit with John. Sarah was younger than me, maybe 35, with the same haunted look I'd worn for years. Her husband Tom was an attorney who'd convinced her that she'd never survive financially without him. "He tells me I'm too stupid to understand our finances," she said, hands shaking as she held her coffee cup. "But I found hotel receipts in his car, and they don't match his business trips." I spent 2 hours sharing everything I'd learned. How to document evidence safely. Rebecca's contact information. The importance of building a support network before making any moves. "You're stronger than you know," I told her as we parted ways. I thought I was trapped too. But women are capable of so much more than we're taught to believe. 3 months later, Sarah filed for divorce. A month after that, she referred another woman to me. Word spread through an invisible network of women supporting women, each of us helping the next find her way out of the darkness. By Christmas, I was volunteering at Safe Harbor, a local organization supporting women leaving abusive relationships. Not all abuse leaves bruises, I learned. Some of it comes disguised as love, wrapped in financial control and emotional manipulation. "You give them hope," the coordinator, Janet, told me after a group session. "They see what's possible when someone like them fights back and wins." That evening, I tucked Emma and Jake into their beds in our house. Truly our house now. No more walking on eggshells, waiting for John's criticism. No more making excuses for his absence or his cruelty. "Mommy," Emma said sleepily, "are you happy now?" I looked around their room, decorated with new artwork and stuffed animals we'd chosen together. Through the window, I could see the garden I'd started planting, something John had always vetoed as too much work. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm very happy now." And for the first time in 23 years, that was completely true. Spring arrived with unexpected news that made me smile over my morning coffee. Linda called while I was getting the kids ready for school, her voice bubbling with barely contained glee. "Kim, you're not going to believe what happened at John's office yesterday. The whole town is talking about it." I tucked the phone between my ear and shoulder while packing Jake's lunch. "What happened?" "HR finally investigated his relationship with Lily. Apparently, someone anonymously sent them copies of all those romantic photos Marcus took, plus evidence that John was using company resources for personal trips. They demoted him to junior associate and moved his office to the basement. The irony was delicious. John, who'd always been obsessed with his professional image and corner office view, relegated to the building's windowless lower level like the snake he'd always been. "There's more," Linda continued. 3 other women from his office came forward about inappropriate advances. "The partners are furious. Word is he'll be asked to resign within the month." I felt a momentary pang of something that might have been sympathy, then remembered his text during Mom's funeral. Some people created their own consequences. That afternoon, Dr. Sarah Chin, no relation to Lily thankfully, smiled at me across her office as Emma colored quietly in the corner. We'd been coming to family therapy for 4 months now, and the changes in all of us were remarkable. "Emma, can you tell me how you felt during your daddy's visit last weekend?" Dr. Chin asked gently. Emma looked up from her drawing of our house, notably featuring only 3 stick figures in the front yard. "Daddy seems sad all the time now. He keeps asking if mommy talks about him, but I told him we're too busy having fun to talk about sad things. Jake, sprawling across the couch with a book, added without looking up. He promised to take us to the amusement park 3 times, but we just sat in his apartment watching TV. Real dads do what they promise. The wisdom of children never ceased to amaze me. They were learning to recognize reliable love versus empty promises. A lesson I'd taken 41 years to master. How does that make you feel about your daddy? Dr. Chen asked. I still love him, Emma said matter-of-factly, but I don't miss him being at our house. He used to make mommy cry when he thought we weren't looking. Dr. Chen's eyes met mine with approval. The children were processing their father's absence in healthy ways, understanding that love didn't require accepting harmful behavior. That evening, I studied my reflection in the bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. Somewhere between the divorce proceedings and building our new life, I'd lost 30 pounds without even trying. The stress weight that had accumulated during years of walking on eggshells had melted away, replaced by the natural energy that came from living authentically. My hair was longer now, a style John had always criticized as impractical. My clothes were brighter, chosen for how they made me feel rather than whether they'd avoid his commentary. Even my posture was different, straighter, more confident, like I'd finally remembered I deserved to take up space in the world. Mommy, you look pretty, Emma said from the doorway, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Thank you, sweetheart. How do you feel about mommy going out with her friends tonight? Emma considered this seriously. Happy. You smile more when you go places without us sometimes. Linda picked me up at 7 for what she insisted on calling girls' night, though we were all well into our 40s. Maria and Jennifer joined us at the new wine bar downtown, where we'd started meeting monthly to celebrate our various life victories. So, Jennifer said after we'd ordered, her eyes twinkling with mischief, when are you going to let us set you up on a date? I nearly choked on my wine. I'm not ready for that. I'm still figuring out who I am without John. Kim, Maria said gently, it's been 8 months since the divorce was finalized. You've rebuilt your entire life. Maybe it's time to consider that you might be ready for something good. The conversation continued around me, but my mind wandered to the question I'd been avoiding. Was I ready? The old me would have said no automatically, terrified of making another mistake. The new me wondered what I might be missing by closing myself off to possibilities. 2 weeks later, that question became urgent when John appeared at my front door unannounced. I opened it to find him holding a bouquet of roses, the expensive kind from Morrison's florist, not the grocery store variety he'd usually brought when he was in trouble. Kim, we need to talk. He'd clearly practiced this speech. I know I made mistakes, but I've been going to counseling. I've changed. The kids need their father and we were good together once. I looked at him, really looked, and saw a middle-aged man desperately trying to reclaim a life he'd thrown away. The roses shook slightly in his hands, betraying the nervousness he was trying to hide. John, the kids have supervised visits with you twice a week. That's all the father they need from you. But what about us? What about our marriage? 23 years has to count for something. The old me might have wavered, might have wondered if I was being too harsh. The new me remembered every lonely night, every excuse I'd made for his absence, every time he'd chosen anything other than his family. Those 23 years taught me what I won't accept anymore. You showed me exactly who you are and I finally believed you. His expression shifted from hope to anger in the space of a heartbeat. You're making a mistake, Kim. You think you're better off alone, but you're not. You'll realize that when the novelty wears off and you're stuck being a single mother forever. I'd rather be alone for the rest of my life than spend another day being lonely in a marriage. He left the roses on my porch steps and drove away without another word. I dropped them directly into the trash can, petals and all. 3 months later, I met Michael at the farmer's market downtown. Emma had begged for fresh strawberries, and Jake wanted to see the rescue dogs that local shelters brought for adoption events. I was juggling shopping bags and trying to keep track of both children when a gentle voice asked if I needed help. These bags look heavy. Mind if I lend a hand? He was tall with kind brown eyes and graying temples, probably close to my age. More importantly, he was addressing the children as equals, not talking over their heads or ignoring them entirely. That's very kind, but we're managing, I said automatically, then caught myself. When had I become so quick to refuse help? Actually, yes. Thank you. The strawberry stand is just over there. His name was Michael Patterson, a widower whose wife had died 3 years earlier from cancer. He taught high school history and coached basketball, and his own teenage daughter was visiting friends in California for the summer. Sarah, my wife, always said the farmer's market was her favorite place, he told me as we walked. I still come here sometimes just to feel close to her. The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. Here was someone who understood loss, who spoke about his late wife with love rather than bitterness. We ended up having lunch at the market cafe, Emma and Jake chattering easily with this stranger who listened to their stories about school and friends with genuine interest. When Jake mentioned his baseball team, Michael's face lit up. I played baseball in college. What position do you play? As Jake launched into detailed analysis of his batting average, I watched Michael's patience and enthusiasm. He wasn't performing kindness, he genuinely enjoyed talking with my son. Would you like to have dinner sometime? He asked as we prepared to leave. I mean all of you. I know a great family restaurant with the best ice cream sundaes in town. Emma's eyes went wide with excitement, but she looked at me for permission. Can we, Mommy? I hesitated for just a moment, then realized that hesitation wasn't fear. It was the delicious anticipation of something good about to begin. We'd love to, I said and meant it completely. For the first time in my adult life I was choosing someone who chose me back. Someone who showed up, who kept promises, who understood that love meant partnership rather than control. Standing in that farmer's market with my children and this kind man who'd appeared in our lives like an unexpected gift, I finally understood what my mother had always known. I deserved to be loved completely, honestly, and without reservation. The woman who'd accepted crumbs for 23 years was gone forever. In her place stood someone ready for the feast. Which moment in Kimberly's journey touched your heart the most? Was it her mother's funeral awakening, the courtroom victory, or finding love again? Share your favorite part in the comments below. Your story might inspire another woman to find her strength. Like if this moved you, and subscribe for more stories of courage and triumph.